So, when I first started my psychology PhD, I thought I had to have it all figured out. How to balance the classes, the clinical work, the research, and then also my personal life. And spoiler alert, I didn't. I felt so overwhelmed, pretty stressed in the first quarter, and honestly, I was considering whether I really wanted to do this or not, and feeling that guilt of, am I really cut out for this? But here's the thing, nobody really tells you or teaches you how to thrive in a PhD program. They just tell you what you need to do to get your degree in the end, but none of the things that will help you in your progress. And that is what I wanted to share with you today. The things that I've learned that has helped me really thrive in this program and not feel so overwhelmingly stressed whenever I'm doing anything. And so, whether you're just starting your program, thinking about getting into a program, or really just deep in the trenches, I hope these tips can be helpful for you. So, professors aren't mind readers, and neither are supervisors. And if you don't tell them what you need, they won't know how to support you because the way you might want to be supported might be very different than the way they're used to supporting people. So, this could mean that you ask for clearer instructions, more frequent feedback, or honestly, firm deadlines. Sometimes I need that, honestly. For example, I told my mentor early on that I needed deadlines to stay on track because if it's arbitrary, then I will wait and I will procrastinate and I will rush to finish, for example, my dissertation proposal until the last week. And so communicating this helped me collaborate more effectively and it kept me from unnecessary stress. And I like to think of these small acts of self-advocacy as self-care. By speaking up for what I need, I'm setting myself up for success while also reducing stress in the long run. And they want to help you. So the more information you give them on how they can best help you, it will actually be very productive. And when you advocate for yourself, approach the conversation as collaboration, because that is what it is, rather than a complaint, especially if you're trying to share your needs kind of in the middle of your relationship throughout the year with whoever it is, a supervisor, mentor, professor. So for instance, instead of saying, you haven't given me enough feedback, framing it as, I'd love to hear your thoughts on my latest draft to make sure I'm on the right track. And when you frame it this way, it creates a more, well, one positive outcome, but also a really productive relationship. And it shows that you value their input to make it while making your needs very, very clear. And the last thing when you're, working with your supervisors is to show people appreciation. Expressing gratitude for their efforts not only makes them feel good, but also strengthens your relationship overall. When someone feels valued, they're often way more enthusiastic about supporting you because they see that you care about their input. And honestly, it also feels really good to make other people feel good. Another thing about advocating is that it also means saying no to commitments that don't align with your goals and values. In a PhD program, you're really busy. So if a project doesn't excite you or help you grow, it's okay to prioritize your own work instead. For me, this means choosing to focus on things that bring me joy and align with my personal and professional goals. Life is short, right? And even with the demands of a PhD program, it's important to remember that. When you put your energy into something you genuinely care about and you are putting your all into it, it has a much higher potential for success and fulfillment rather than doing it for the numbers or for the resume. So remember, you can't pour from an empty cup, and setting those boundaries and making room for joy allows you to put your best self into the work that actually matters to you. Okay, this bun is hurting my head. Okay, so being a PhD student is demanding, like I said. And if you're in one, you most definitely know this, but it shouldn't define your entire identity. So, making time for hobbies, relationships, and downtime helps maintain your sense of self. And I think sometimes we forget that in professional settings. We live in such a productive society, and our self-worth tends to be tied to how much we can output. At the end of the day, I really believe that none of this matters. Your career, it doesn't matter. It really doesn't. When we're gonna die one day, right? So enjoy this life. You're more than your career. Go on those trips. Spend time with the people you love, because I think when we're on our last days on this planet, we'll definitely cherish those moments a lot more than our careers. Instead of waiting until you're burnt out, view self-care as a way to stay mentally and physically healthy right now. For example, scheduling your regular exercise, meal prepping, or even weekly off limit times at work or for work can give you the bandwidth to handle future challenges. So it's a matter of seeing it as preventative care. And I think we don't really do that in our productive societies, as self-care is something you do once you're stressed, right? But it's actually really important to do it as a preventative thing, something that you do to nourish yourself. And self-care can look different for everyone. I see it as doing something now to avoid stress later. It prevents you from being burnt out much faster. When we strain ourselves strain ourselves for something or someone else, we eventually can develop some resentment towards it. And to avoid that, take the time off. Go on that walk. Go on those trips. Prioritize your life outside of being a student, because you're more than a student. That's only one aspect of who you are right now. And another thing, if you're too exhausted or distracted, it will show in your work. When I am with clients as a clinician, this can mean being less present for my clients. When I take care of myself, I'm showing up as my best self in every role that I'm playing. And I honestly notice this in myself a lot. If have not taken care of myself, if I'm just go, 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 my mind will wander, or I'll miss what my client said in a therapy session, and I'm just not fully in that space. And it just makes me not an effective psychologist. Imposter syndrome. That is a feeling that honestly really thrives in isolation. By talking to people, your peers, professors, supervisors, you'll actually realize that everyone struggles at times, and you're not the only one. Whether it's, for readings, deadlines, balancing responsibilities, whatever it is, someone else is around to understand what you're feeling. And knowing that you're not alone really, really eases that self-doubt. The first quarter of my program, most of these lessons are honestly from that first quarter. So in that first quarter, I had to take 7 classes. And I was on top of working, being an older sister, which surprisingly can take a lot out if your family depends on you quite a bit. And I was undeniably overwhelmed. I was falling so behind on readings for all the classes, and every time I would do one reading, three more would pile on. It felt like I was honestly not cut out for this lifestyle, and I was like, what am I doing? This is hard. how are there students in this program right now who have kids and who's just recently became a parent? How are these people doing this? And once I actually focused on getting to know my peers and making friendships, I learned that we were all going through the same thing, and I honestly was so shocked to hear that. And together, some of us actually randomly ended up sharing with a TA in a class that we were behind on these readings. And she shared with us that it's almost impossible to do all of the readings and gave us so much advice on focusing on what's relevant in those readings and not feeling incomplete if you can't complete it all. Without getting to know my peers, none of this would have been possible, and I would have held on to that feeling of being an imposter for so much longer. I will honestly never forget this person. I can't really remember her face, but the feeling I felt when she shared her experience and the almost instant relief, like, "Ugh, I'm not behind." Like all those feelings of those thoughts I had in my head of I'm behind, I'm not cut out for this, it's all just dissipated. When you're in this PhD program, fellow PhD students, your peers, your colleagues, understand the unique challenges that come with being in something like this more than anyone else. So, building connections allows you to share those strategies, vent frustrations, and celebrate wins together. It's so helpful to have and know people that you can cross check your progress with. So, and when when you help each other, support each other, it's altruism, taking care of your people, right? I also feel like beyond the emotional support that talking to your colleagues has, these connections can also lead to more professional opportunities like co authoring papers or sharing research resources. Ultimately, you're in a place where you can learn from each other. Take advantage of that. If I look back into my life, my success, my victories in my life have been a result of many people's work, including my own, coming together. It's not solely an individual feat. Of course, a lot of the work put in can be individual, but there's been so many aspects of people that have contributed to where I am today. And thinking about it spiritually, which helps me quite a bit, I do feel like when you help people from your soul, from that place of just wanting to help someone, the universe has a natural way of providing back. Guess it's that idea of energy recycling, right? You put energy in, you get energy back. Energy doesn't get destroyed. I don't remember the exact phrase, but I'm sure you've heard of this before. Essentially, we need to take care of each other on this life journey. That's ultimately what I'm trying to share with all of this. This one's a tough one for most of us, but I challenge you to do this, to really honestly do this. It's a perfect time to make mistakes, right? And to learn from them. That's the big point here. Whether it's in your research, clinical work, or even just managing your time, mistakes are an opportunity to grow. In fact, the more mistakes you make, the more you learn about what works and what doesn't. And PhD programs are meant to be the space where you test ideas, take risks, and figure things out. Perfection is not the goal, progress is. Remember that progress is the goal. And this took me some time to figure out. I didn't realize that one of the main points of being in school for this long, 5 years to be exact, is to make those mistakes and learn from them. Initially, I was so risk averse, always tiptoeing around situations, especially in clinical work, working with clients, because it's these people's lives that I'm impacting. But then I made a pretty big mistake. That experience, one I will never forget, and the conversation I had with my clinical supervisor afterwards completely shifted my perspective. Honestly, it gave me the permission to stop walking on eggshells and be more present with my clients. I will never forget this experience because afterwards, after I repaired my therapeutic alliance, my relationship with this client, it was the most productive, most helpful, most impactful sessions I've ever had with someone. And by the time I was interviewing for my second year clinical site, because the first year I was at the school clinic, my main question to a lot of these clinical directors was, is this a site where I can make mistakes? Are mistakes allowed? The clinical director of the current place I'm working at was so amazed by this question, and I was shocked because her eyes grew wide and she just was so shocked and started giggling, and it just opened up a valuable conversation. I think many role models in the field assume students know this, but it's not always communicated clearly, and I often feel like we need that. We need that validation, that communication to be able to make those mistakes. And it wasn't until I made my first mistake that I learned it's not only okay, but it's actually essential. Since then, I've really embraced moments where I felt like I didn't handle a session perfectly, a client session. And reflecting on these moments have been one of the most valuable parts of my growth. Instead of focusing on what went wrong, I focus on what can I do differently next time. It's honestly, because at first I was letting these mistakes take over me, but now I'm controlling my mistakes. I'm putting the power back into myself, and as I am consciously making these mistakes, I don't feel as guilty. I'm like, okay, now how can I do this differently? When this comes up next time, what do I do that won't give me the same outcome? What can I do differently next time? This mindset has really helped me move forward with more confidence and clarity. And like I said, you're putting the power back to you. You're giving yourself the steering wheel again, because before I was letting the mistakes control me, and now I'm controlling the mistakes. The beauty of being in a PhD program is that you're in a learning environment. This is the time to make those mistakes so that when you enter the field and you're on your own, well, you're not really ever, but you're better prepared. It's far better to stumble and learn now than to avoid risk and miss the lessons altogether. And if you're the kind of person that needs to be told, hey, it's okay to make mistakes and you have my permission, ask for it. Like I did with my clinical supervisors. Whenever I have a new clinical supervisor now, I ask them that because I need that validation. I need that permission to do it and be okay doing it, because otherwise I'm going to feel like I'm doing something wrong. And that has helped me a lot. In fact, when you ask your clinical supervisor that, or your professor, or whoever is your mentor, they see that you're eager to learn. Life as a PhD student can get overwhelming. Yep. Between clinical work, research, classes, and the rest of life, right? Family, friends, living. It's easy to feel like you're juggling too many balls in the air. I can't even juggle, actually. So that's why staying organized and planning ahead are absolutely key. I'm not naturally an organized person, nor am I someone that plans in advance. I'm actually really bad at that. But when it comes to school and work, areas that can quickly become stress triggers for a lot of people, I actually make an effort. The goal with all the lessons I'm sharing here is to reduce stress as much as possible. You don't want to be in a chronically stressed state. It is not good for you. It is one of the biggest things that reduces your lifespan. You don't want to do that. And staying organized has been a lifesaver for that. For me, Google Calendar is a tool I rely on the most. It's where I keep track of everything from deadlines to appointments to client sessions or anything else that comes up. I put it on there. And I use this so I can free up my mind space, my mental space for other things, for more important things like having fun, right? And instead of trying to remember a due date or another commitment, I let the calendar handle it for me. And it doesn't mean that you don't have enough memory or anything like that. It's actually really clever. Work smart, not hard, right? So it's a simple habit, but it makes a huge difference in my ability to stay on top of everything. One of the other things that I love doing, and I'll tell you why I like doing it's very simple actually, is creating is having a to-do list. The reason for that is, well, I'll tell you. You can cross things off as you go. I know that sounds very simple. We all know what to-do lists are, but it gives you this tangible sense of accomplishment at the end of the day. On the days where I don't write a to-do list, I often don't realize how much work I've actually gotten done, and my brain feels so scattered. And keeping a list isn't just about organization. It's a tool for boosting motivation and recognizing your progress. Staying organized also allows me to live my life. For example, if I know I have travel plans, I'll schedule my work and my client responsibilities and things I need to get done accordingly. That way I can enjoy my time off fully without feeling guilty of having any unfinished tasks. Planning ahead means I'm able to be more present, both in my work and in my personal life. So if you're like me and don't naturally gravitate towards organization, it's about finding systems that feel intuitive for you and sustainable. And for me, that's the to-do list. For example, I found that writing a quick to-do list at the start of the week or even the night before gives me a clear idea of what's ahead. Some people prefer apps, bullet journals, sticky notes, whatever works for you. Sometimes I get a sticky note and I put it on my computer because a lot of my work is through the computer. So it's all there, visible. The key is to experiment and find what works for you. Even the best plans will occasionally go sideways. So staying organized doesn't mean that you rigidly stick to a certain schedule, because that's also not helpful. You have to be able to kind of adapt to how things happen in life. Things will come up, and that's entirely normal. So it's not about being rigid about it. It's about creating this framework that allows for flexibility as well. So when things don't go as planned, it's easier to adjust if you already have a system in place. All right. So every component that I've shared with you today is meant to help reduce stress. and truly enjoy this experience. Why spend 5 years in constant stress when you can build habits and take small steps that make it more manageable? Because if you really think about it, you're training for what it might be like after these 5 years are done. So better start now and create this part of your life, not all of your life, this one part of your life that will weave in a lot more easily rather than create so much stress. So let's make it manageable and maybe even enjoyable. School is just one part of your life, and this profession will also just be one part of your life. It's important, yes, but so is your happiness, your health, your relationships. So remember that. And if these tips resonate for you, let me know in the comments below which ones you'll start applying, or share your own lessons for thriving in a PhD program, whether it's clinical psychology or something else. I would love to hear about them because I'm always looking for ways to make it less stressful and more enjoyable. And if you found this helpful, don't forget to like and subscribe and share it with someone who might need it. Thank you so much for watching, for being here. And remember, this is your journey, so make it meaningful. So much gratitude.